on this edition of In the Life.
Down on the farm and under the big top.
I guess you could say I was the first ringmaster ringling outed.
From cartoons to car makers. All as American as apple pie. Next on In the Life, America's information line on gay and lesbian issues and culture. In the Life is funded in part by the H. Van Ameringen Foundation. Additional support provided by the Gill Foundation, the Joyce Mertz Gilmore Foundation, the Michael Palm Foundation, The Advocate, the National Gay and Lesbian News Magazine since 1967, and In the Life members nationwide.
Welcome to In the Life and Detroit, where the car is king. I'm Katherine Linton. We came here to look at a fight for gay rights inside one of America's big three automakers, Chrysler. Throughout this edition, in fact, we'll meet gay men and lesbians who are working in places you might call as American as apple pie. On the farm, under the big top, even in the kingdom that Walt Disney built. But we begin here, the car capital of the world, where a gay Chrysler worker named Ron Woods got tired of being harassed at work and set out to do something about it.
Almost every bathroom wall had my name on it, you know, describing all these sex acts, you know, and there was a bullseye at work that was posted saying such and such amount of money reward for the assassination of Ron Woods with a bullseye in it.
Ron's story was chronicled over the last 5 years in the new documentary, Out at Work.
When we started Out at Work in 47 states, it was legal to fire someone on paper for being gay and lesbian. Now in 41 states, it is legal to fire someone for being gay and lesbian.
Directed and produced by Tammy Gold and Kelly Anderson, Out at Work is the first documentary to follow lesbians and gay men on the job.
I told myself, you go in there every day. I don't care if you're cold, you have a flu, doesn't matter what. You're going to be the best employee they ever had. And they're going to live with me, just like I have to live with them. And I went in there all the time and did the best I could. And I realized it wasn't going to work. That to the day I retired or the day I died, that I would always be that faggot that people hated.
You know, we've been talking for a long time as gay and lesbians about marriage and about the military. And I think that we missed the fundamental thing for our humanities, and that's the right to work and the right to be full at our jobs.
Yeah, what's amazing about Out at Work is how these really, in a way, kind of regular people, you know, confronted these horrendous situations and really they find their way out of them. I mean, Ron goes from being a guy who would go to work and nobody would say hi to him for like a year. He would eat, you know, alone at a table for lunch every day for a year, and in the end, he ends up getting elected as a delegate to the convention of the United Auto Workers. He stands up, he makes a speech supporting gay rights in the contract, in the auto workers contract, and it passes unanimously. You know, so he makes this huge, incredible transformation from being completely
a pariah,
kind of disempowered to being, you know, this real successful union member and activist, and so
and completely out, you know.
I stand firmly in support of this contract demand for all groups listed, including the word sexual orientation. After I became known as gay in 1991, my life became a living hell due to extreme harassment and discrimination. I ask that my union do the right thing by steadfastly demanding that such discrimination be forbidden contractually. Please take this very seriously and understand that we must protect all of our members. Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother.
I think it is time for people to understand that workplace rights are for everyone.
But how do you secure workplace protections for gay and lesbian workers at Chrysler? In the Life traveled to Detroit to look at gay rights at one of the big three automakers.
At this point in time, the company can come at us and fire us for no reason at all. And it's not fair. It's discrimination, and you've always got a dinosaur on your back, because you never know if they want to get rid of you, they can do it.
Last fall, Chrysler refused to include sexual orientation protections in their contract with the UAW, arguing that they already had a general policy of non-discrimination. In protest, Ron and other activists organized the Campaign for Equal Rights at Chrysler, picketing for months at Chrysler World Headquarters.
Adding sexual orientation to the contract, they refused. That is our goal. That is our demand. I personally, and I know many other people, that will not stop until we receive that demand.
Meanwhile, non-union employees were organizing a gay and lesbian employee association, People of Diversity.
The goals of People of Diversity at Chrysler really reflect trying to work within the corporation and within the corporate structure as an educating and advocating voice for the gay and lesbian community.
Also in the works, from a socially responsible investment firm, was a stockholder resolution.
A stockholder resolution is sort of like a ballot referendum for shareholders. When you own stock in a company will mail out once every year its proxy statement, which will ask all shareholders to vote on a number of issues.
On behalf of Chrysler shareholders, Shelley Alpern proposed a resolution calling for new policies on sexual orientation.
We were looking for three things from Chrysler. One, that they change the policy and be explicit about it. Secondly, that they publicize it internally so that all employees would be aware of exactly what was expected of them. And number three, that they back up the new policy with diversity training that would cover sexual orientation issues in the workplace.
Chrysler agreed to the demands of the resolution on the condition that it not appear on the proxy statement. So far, they have revised an employee policy to include sexual orientation in its non-discrimination clause.
The new policy that came out, it was a surprise to us. We were not aware that it was happening. It's great. It's an awesome step. It really is. It's an official policy of Chrysler that actually spells out the word sexual orientation.
I think it is a positive step, but it absolutely is just a positive step. We want substantial, real, fundamental change here at Chrysler.
What's happened was the company learned to spell. They actually learned how to spell sexual orientation, but they didn't know exactly where to put it. They need to put it on the contract between the UAW and the corporation.
But Chrysler argues that adding sexual orientation to legally protected categories such as race and gender sends the wrong message.
One of the things that we think is important as a corporation is to send a message that we will not tolerate discrimination or harassment against any of our employees on any basis. And to further spell out and list out groups we felt might lead individuals who were not listed to believe that they were excluded. And our intent was to ensure that all of our employees know that they are included in our non-discrimination policy.
Martha Grovat has been out on the job since 1989 and has suffered years of harassment.
I think that management is perhaps more willing to address a complaint of discrimination when it comes to one of their own supervisors or their own top-level engineering staff. That generally, management often has an attitude of contempt towards hourly workers, towards people who work with their hands.
We are very concerned about our employees. We believe that it is very important for us to have an inspired workforce in order to deliver the kinds of products to our customers that we want to. So to the extent that there are employees in our workforce who have concerns, we would encourage them to come forth and to have a confidential conversation with me or someone in my office so that perhaps we can give them the kinds of assurances that they would need to bring forth any concerns that they have.
But what about those who remain closeted to avoid harassment? We contacted 11 additional employees who would not be interviewed on camera, and only one would agree to appear anonymously.
It's really hard. I want to tell the people that I work with a lot, but I rely on them to be able to perform my job. And if they want to mess me up, they can. So I keep quiet and do the best that I can do.
I'm very out at work. I work with a really incredible group of people. My boss is great. He knows about POD. In fact, I run press releases and stuff by him.
These drastically different experiences at Chrysler are why some union members continue to push for the contract changes.
I mean, I believe in being polite, do not get me wrong, but sometimes you have to lay it on the line and say, you're not going to give it to, we've tried for 5 years to get this, and so we're going to pick it.
I don't just want language. There's all kinds of anti-discrimination language, but the discrimination still goes on.
I have to guard everything that comes out of my mouth to protect myself. And I do that. It's very hard. It's real hard.
While shareholders and union members at Chrysler took steps towards making workplace history, voters across America made political history this past November by electing a record number of gay and lesbian candidates to public office. Here in the nation's capital, for the first time, there is an openly lesbian African American in the United States Congress, representing the District of Columbia. And as you're about to see, in addition to being black and lesbian in this traditionally straight white male institution, representing DC poses yet another set of challenges, no matter who you are. We bring you now a day in the life of the woman who is facing these challenges head on, United States Representative Sabrina Sojourner.
This is Brookland. This is one of the oldest neighborhoods in the District of Columbia, and it's originally was the suburbs of Washington, D.C. I have lived here for 5 out of the 6 years that I've been living in Washington, D.C. Brookland is about 70% black, about 6 to 8% Latino, has about 2% Asian, and then the rest white. And that is about what the demographics of Washington, D.C. are. I moved here 6 years ago, and I suddenly had to face something. I had to give up my right to having a representation in the House of Representatives and in the Senate.
Congressional delegation, Chrissy speaking. May I help you?
As the U.S. Shadow Representative from D.C., Sabrina is lobbying to gain representation.
All right. There are a lot of people who really don't know that we don't have a vote in the House of Representatives and don't know that we don't have any senators. They don't think about it, and they just don't know. And so our big job is to raise the education level and the understanding level of both people in the Congress and in the country and around the world.
Ironically, Washington, D.C., home of the federal government, is the only place in the country whose citizens have no voice. All decisions that impact the district are made by Congress, none of whom represent the district.
There are literally thousands of decisions that are made that fully and solely impact the District of Columbia. The District of Columbia is one of the places in one of the jurisdictions that allows adoption by lesbian and gay couples. And every year that there's a Congress that doesn't like us, those particular regulations are put in jeopardy. And Congress should have nothing to say about that.
For Sabrina, representing the interests of D.C. residents does not happen from behind a desk. She goes to the source. First stop, Tyler Elementary School.
KidSafe is a kids safety program.
I want everybody to say 911 on 3. 1, 2, 3. 911.
Next stop, a meeting at the University of the District of Columbia to strategize about securing a school budget threatened by the City Financial Control Board.
It's outrageous that we in the District of Columbia should be deprived of public higher education access because people don't think that it's important for us to have it.
A late lunch was reserved for Robert Chan, a student intern with the Office of Asian American Pacific Islander Affairs. Sabrina's ability to outreach to different communities reflects her own multiple identities.
I am a woman, a single mother, I'm a feminist, I'm African American, I'm Cherokee.
And, as chronicled in her book, Psychic Scars and Other Mad Thoughts,
I'm also a survivor of sexual abuse. And I think that all of those things have come together to create who I am in a way that gives me a depth and breadth of understanding of how oppression in particular works.
With all of these concerns, Sabrina still has to face her own backyard.
Last year, I had done all of this tilling and planting, anticipating spending my entire summer gardening. And then, you know, a few community people and some friends had this idea about me running for office. And by the time I got all the petition signatures in, all of this was like so incredibly overgrown. It was amazing.
Finally, Sabrina's partner Letitia comes home to get ready for the evening's event.
So what's on tap for tonight? The dinner, right?
Yep. And it's black tie optional, so.
Okay, good. Well, I don't have black tie, so.
If there was ever a moment in my life where I felt like the world was my oyster, it is this moment. Certainly, before I decided to do this, no one saw an open African-American lesbian in this kind of a political position. I know that you've entrusted me with not just your vote and not just your personal support, but a large expectation about doing something different with this position. And I want you to know I'm going to do my best not to let you down. Thank you.
Sabrina Sojourner may soon learn why many observers have called the government a circus and politicians clowns. But the real circus, or at least the three-ring circus, is a quintessentially American form of wholesome family entertainment, where strong men tame lions and beautiful women fly through the air in leotards. The men are macho and the women are glamorous, and everybody is heterosexual on the surface. But upon closer inspection, one will find that from center rings to sideshow stages, gay people have always been among the dreamers who've decided to run away and join this very unique institution. We begin with one of the most unique circus forms, the sideshow.
From the very beginning of the sideshow, the American sideshow in the middle of the 1800s, the intent was for family entertainment. It was what they called a Sunday school show. There were some exceptions to this. From the very beginning, there were bearded ladies, which was sort of gender bending in its very earliest form. And then also another act kind of snuck in around the turn of the century. We don't quite know the origin of this. It was called, well, in the sideshow it's known as a half and half, but it's known medically as the hermaphrodite. The interesting thing from the sideshow angle is that traditionally the half and halves were men, were just cross-dressers, transvestites.
Josephine Joseph, half woman, half man. Have a cigar, Joseph. You dropped your lipstick, Josephine.
From the people I've spoken with, the old sideshow performers and showmen that worked with the half and halves, in almost every case that I've come across, they were gay. Sometimes they would work a season or two as a half and half and then grow a beard and just dress as a woman and perform as a bearded woman, though the majority of the bearded ladies that worked in sideshows were actually women.
One of these actual or authentic bearded women is Jennifer Miller.
Yeah, I worked at Coney Island Circus Sideshow for 3 seasons. And I am the bearded lady there, and I give a rap, a good, hard, funny political monologue, and which culminates in knife juggling.
And I'm safe. I'm safe.
Not all the gay people that I've known who've worked in sideshows have felt comfortable being out. I was out as a lesbian. There was Michael Wilson, lovely, fabulous illustrated man who's died now, who was bisexual, and who wasn't out at work except to me. And then there was a sort of half man, half woman across the street who was out as well. So 2 out of 3 were out and 1 was half out. Not bad.
Beyond wanting to be openly lesbian, Jennifer wanted a space to express her politics, so she created her own, in the form of a circus.
Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, and the rest of us.
Circus Amok is a free circus that performs in the parks of New York, which is political. We're concerned with putting out information that we feel will confront the audience on a thinking level about contemporary political issues. It's predominantly queer personnel, ring members, with an aesthetic that's based in whatever you could call a queer aesthetic.
A queer aesthetic based on some very classic circus routines.
The Adagio act is based on a very classic Adagio act, an Adagio act being a very slow motion partner acrobatics act, which even in the straight circus, the mainstream circus, has often been a very homoerotic act. I think there's a long tradition of homoerotic imagery in the circus.
But the occasional homoerotic imagery does not add up to an easy place to be out.
In the circus world I find is very traditional, even the small circuses. So you might be able to be a player in the circus and be gay or lesbian and have your friends accept you, but you're not going to feel like you're part of an endeavor that's representing you. Unless, of course, you come to Circus Amok.
Or Airmail, an independent 2-man trapeze act that is one of the only acts of its kind in the world.
The basic ingredients of what makes our act work are similar to any kind of relationship. A lot of trust, communication, and commitment. As out gay men, we wanted to include that aspect of our identity in our act because it is inherent in any kind of performance duet, whether it be in dance or circus, an inherent romantic quality, a sensuality involved. We really wanted to keep that presence in our act.
Performing in places ranging from this straight club in Japan to gay clubs in San Francisco, Airmail meets another goal.
The gay community isn't really used to seeing circus, and circus isn't really used to seeing the gay community or a gay presence. So I think that in combining that, it can bridge both. And just for a straight audience, also seeing 2 men working closely together, it kind of reaffirms a positive image, of gay people.
But the question remains, does one have to be a sideshow attraction or form an act in order to reveal a gay identity under the big top? Openly gay ringmaster Eric Gillett explains his experience.
I'm an actor and I'm a singer and now I'm a ringmaster, but I'm not a gay ringmaster, a gay singer, or a gay actor. I am all those things and I am gay. My sexuality does not enter into the way that I present my work in this particular forum.
His forum, the largest and most traditional American circus. When Eric arrived at Ringling Brothers 11 years ago, our interview today would have seemed out of the question.
I've never forgotten my very first day on the show. I was driven in by the company driver from the airport, taken to see my train room, and our train master was waiting with the general manager and with the manager of the show. And when I got out of the car, the first thing they did was walk up and shake my hand very firmly and say, "Boy, are we glad you're here. That last ringmaster was a faggot."
But Ringling Brothers' support over the years surprised even the ringmaster himself.
I didn't know myself how they would feel about public acknowledgement of it outside of the world in which I live until I was approached by publicists for Ringling who asked me if I wanted to be profiled in Out magazine. And I figured, well, if Ringling's come that far in this many years, I think I can go right along with them. I was proud that I guess you could say I was the first ringmaster Ringling outed.
Ultimately, whether drawn to the center ring or an alternative stage, gay people arrive in this world for reasons one would expect.
What would attract somebody to the circus? You know, you come here for the excitement of the show and for the wonder of what we do, and you express yourself within that.
As we've just seen, circus people struggle with that difficult balance between their very public work and their private selves. It's a struggle, in fact, that very few gay Americans escape. Not even one of the kings of pop art, Andy Warhol. A man whose success was based in celebrity and mass media was anything but public about his private life. But Warhol's attitude towards sexuality and gender surfaced in his art long before he became famous, as correspondent Hal German discovered at the Warhol Museum in Pittsburgh.
We know that Andy Warhol had sexual partners. He had lovers. And we found romantic letters from him to other people and vice versa.
Tom Sokolowski is anxious to dispel a myth. Andy Warhol, he says, was not a lonely asexual man. He just kept his private life private.
He came from ethnic blue-collar roots. So in many ways, he was very, very traditional. His partners were his private partners, and what he did with them wasn't part of his art.
But if all you know of Andy's art is soup cans and Brillo boxes, his earliest work may hold some surprises.
They're not erotic. I mean, they're really gentle, and they're really sort of loving images.
As director of the Andy Warhol Museum in Warhol's hometown of Pittsburgh, Sokolowski is fascinated by Warhol's art and by his life.
Andy Warhol was the consummate constructed self. He went from being the decidedly Eastern European immigrant Andrew Warhola, whose first language was Slovak tongue, not English, to going to be Andy Warhol, which was a hip name.
To commercial success on Madison Avenue.
Well, it's very funny. In the advertising world, he was referred to as the shoe guy. So if ever you wanted the best person to illustrate an ad for shoes, you called Warhol.
But Warhol's private drawings from that period show another side. Asian boy, women kissing women, men kissing men.
This work, which looks very sweet, maybe even sacred to us nowadays, and yet how often would you find two men kissing, even in a little drawing in the 1950s? Warhol knew everyone in gay subculture in New York, and he immediately found out all the people who were like himself. Not all gay men, necessarily, but people who were interested in this kind of constructed identity, who understood the chic and the cool and the snappy and the daring. He always wore these ghastly wigs. In a sense, when you saw this wig, which was sort of sprouting out Medusa-like, you'd look at the wig and not at Warhol. So again, it was this cover. And he understood how America was going to look at its stars, and that surface and the constructed identity was more important than anything else. And for the rest of his life, and for the rest of his art, that was the prime focus.
Marilyn Monroe, Elizabeth Taylor, Judy Garland.
And in this room, a reproduction of Warhol's Silver Clouds exhibit from the late 60s. Very gay.
You know, what could be more fey or more gay, perhaps, than bouncing balloon sculpture?
The 1960s also found Warhol behind the lens of a camera, creating experimental films. In many of them, seemingly nothing happened. The Empire State Building for 8 hours and 5 minutes.
And people say, oh, you know, what a bunch of dreck that is. And yet, if you look at it, it's about observing this one object, which also is rather phallic. And it was the idea of observing a human activity slowed down to such a case that you would maybe observe different things happening in it that normally, when you just move quickly through them, you don't understand the subtlety of them.
Kiss. 54 minutes of couples kissing, including 2 men.
but not in a kind of forbidden way, but rather part of the process of his everyday life, or every gay person's everyday life. Make them just as mundane, which this long, protracted film about a kiss is, as kissing would be in any heterosexual couple's life. This is something that I, we, they do.
This is a film clip from one of Warhol's rarely seen screen tests. The subject here is Marcel Duchamp, who performed in drag as Rose C'est la Vie. The idea was to sit or stand in front of the camera for 4 minutes without speaking.
4 minutes sounds like a short time, but it's interminable when you just have these bright lights on in front of you, and he used very, very bright lights. And Marcel Duchamp begins and then gets very nervous by the end, as any human being would.
Though many of his subjects were openly gay, Warhol's art in later years became less overtly gay.
You know, in a way, I think perhaps Warhol felt he had conquered that issue within and of himself.
Still, there is this, Andy Warhol in drag, and some of his very last photographs.
What does he focus on but the beautiful body of a young man, scantily clothed or not clothed at all? So his interest in the male form was something that was continuous all his life. It, in many ways, is quintessentially a gay equation, in that it's a way of seeing those things that maybe the world doesn't like to see in itself, and to speak with authority and with some fun and with some sense of power. What more powerful legacy can one give to gay America than that?
Hi, I'm Eric Michael Gillett from Ringling Brothers and Barnum & Bailey, and you're watching In the Light.
Still to come on In the Life. Gay on the farm, and parents get political. But first, we're here in Los Angeles, home to Mickey's slice of the American pie, the Disney Corporation. We came here for a glimpse inside the Magic Kingdom, home to many gay men and lesbians, both on screen and behind the scenes. Now, Gay Radar has always detected a certain level of camp in the good, clean family fun that's created here. But now, from executives to animators, gay men and lesbians are increasingly making their mark at this all-American institution. Correspondent Bill Britt picks up the story.
First, that fez and vest combo is much too 3rd century. These patches, what are we trying to say? Beggar? No, let's work with me
In
here.
animated hits like Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast, in gay-themed movies like Priest, and in Disney's decision to stand by Ellen whether she comes out of the closet or not, it's obvious Disney is not keeping its camp humor and gay characters in the closet. Well, here at company headquarters, gay and lesbian employees are marking the 1-year anniversary of the company's domestic partner policy, which extends health care and other benefits to the partners of gay and lesbian employees. We came here to find out whether being gay at Disney really means being part of the magic.
Just a little bit of pixie dust.
Sure, we're part of the magic. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I have to say that I love working for this company, and I've met some fabulous people at Disney.
What do you want me to do, dress and drag and do the hula? Luau!
But times have not always been so magical for gay employees at the company that Mickey built. Just ask former Disney teen idol Tommy Kirk, star of Old Yeller, Swiss Family Robinson, and The Shaggy Dog. Kirk made the news 5 years ago when he revealed that at 21, he was fired for having a gay liaison with a minor. The man who fired him, Walt Disney himself.
Walt Disney had a reputation as one of the more conservative businessmen ever, had attitudes that were very much in keeping with conservatives of his time, which were homophobic. Gays and lesbians either don't exist or shouldn't exist.
25 years later, the Disney lot is a very different place for its gay employees. Richard Jennings, head of Hollywood Supports, was instrumental in persuading Disney to join other Hollywood studios in adopting a domestic partner benefits policy.
How did it come to pass that benefits were actually passed for these employees?
Well, Disney is our biggest studio, and Disney had a special concern that a lot of the studios don't, which is that as a very family-identified company, they knew that they would come under more attack by members of the radical right for extending these benefits.
In response to the domestic partner benefits, the Reverend Lou Sheldon, head of the Traditional Values Coalition, wrote, With the understanding that the homosexual agenda has penetrated Hollywood, it should come as no surprise that Disney now supports anti-family values.
Michael Eisner, you have decided to give health benefits to all your employees, same-sex benefits to people who are couples. You've come in for a lot of criticism for that. Was that a tough decision?
Actually, it was not a tough decision. Every single company in the entertainment industry, 400 other companies, IBM just did it. We believe it's appropriate, non-discriminatory. We have a non-discriminatory policy at the Walt Disney Company.
But you might have been easier taking the safer road, right?
No, the safer road is the right road.
Besides adapting to gay employees, Disney has also had to adapt to the gay consumer.
Back in Disneyland in California, there was a case where a same-sex couple was out on the dance floor of one of the Disney-owned nightclubs. They were asked by a management person to stop doing that, and that ultimately led to a lawsuit against the company for it.
But that was 9 years ago. This year, Doug Swallow is planning to attend Gay and Lesbian Day at Walt Disney World in Florida, which he founded 7 years ago. Though not sponsored by Disney, the annual June event sparked more unwanted attention from conservative groups like the American Family Association. Ooh. Gay men and lesbians working within the Walt Disney Company can turn for support to League, the Lesbian and Gay United Employees of Disney.
I try to respond to people by saying that I think it's a wonderful time we live in when the definition of the family is growing and expanding and changing. And my family may be my partner and my blue tick coonhound and my 2 cats and my 7 fish, but that's my family.
I think that one of the reasons Disney gets a lot of flack is because people sort of hold on to it from their childhood as a last sort of bastion of innocence.
Pretty flower.
And when you put the word homosexual in Disney, it really sort of messes with their mind. But what they have to understand is there isn't very much, just as much of an innocence on my part. I had that same sort of childhood and that same sort of fascination with the stories that were told to me.
Gosh.
Is David going to be available at noon?
Rick Lead is the openly gay president of the Wind Dancer Group, a Disney affiliate that produces the hit sitcom Home Improvement.
Well, I've done business with Disney probably all of the 20 years or so I've been in the entertainment industry, and I would say that there have always been lots and lots of gay employees at Disney. And there are an awful lot of senior people in the Disney lot who are gay, who are openly, comfortably gay. You know, animation for decades, you know, there are a lot of artists and animators. There have always been, I guess, a lot of artists who are gay, a lot of animators who are gay.
As I live and breathe, a fairy.
And the time I worked at Disneyland, very large percentage of the employees are gay. It was probably one of the outest places to work.
There's something about features animation which very much has drawn on the talents, skills of gay and lesbian people. I don't know why that is, but we very much dominate in that field, which has been very important to Disney since the beginning.
One of the brightest stars in Disney's feature animation department was producer and lyricist Howard Ashman, who won 2 Academy Awards for his work on Disney projects. William Locke accepted an award for his late partner.
I was the first gay partner that I'm aware of to accept an Academy Award, posthumously or otherwise. I also wanted to focus some attention on the fact that Howard had died of AIDS, and that people should be aware of the fact that we're losing a very important creative community.
And some of Howard's sensibility as a gay man popped up in the final product.
Now look at me, wasted away to practically nothing.
I think the first one came up in The Little Mermaid with the character of Ursula. Just in Howard's visualization of that character, he drew a lot from Divine, the drag queen from Baltimore, where he grew up. And that whole sort of sly camp humor crept into her character very early on. And of course, Gaston and the whole macho thing in Beauty and the Beast was sort of a send-up of you know, gay masculinity and how obsessed gay men can be with that.
And every last inch of me's covered with hair.
And the subtle lines in certain songs about decorating with antlers, etc., you know, was something that really would come from a gay sensibility.
I use antlers in all of my decorating.
Being that a gay man was writing it, you know, it just happened naturally.
So, what attracted gay men and lesbians to the wonderful world of Disney in the first place?
Well, like most kids from the 60s, I was plunked down every Sunday night in front of the television to watch The Wonderful World of Color, and that's how I grew up on it. But that sort of magic was always very appealing to me.
As a child, Howard loved Walt Disney television and films. He had a dream when he was a small boy about the Mouseketeers from the Mickey Mouse Club coming to his bedroom window and saying, "Howard, come with us. Come be a part of our group," and he would run away with them and be a Mouseketeer. So he finally did do that, I think, at about the age 35.
I've always thought that Disney attracted the brightest and the best. And then when I met the people in League, I thought, wow, these are the brightest and the brightest of the brightest and the best. So I've had a wonderful experience the last 5 years at Disney.
So obviously both of you do genuinely feel part of the magic.
Sometimes a little too much, but yeah.
The man who created the Magic Kingdom didn't start out here in Hollywood. In fact, Walt Disney spent his early years on a farm, and his love for farm life in rural America inspired him to create Main Street USA, now an attraction at Disney theme parks around the world. Gay men and lesbians who grew up on the farm have their own stories to tell about how their upbringing influenced their lives and why they've decided to stay in their communities or to leave farm life for good. We take you now far away from Los Angeles to Dodge County, Wisconsin for the story.
I grew up in southeastern Indiana in Franklin County on a small combination dairy farm.
I was born in '38. The farm that I grew up on was sort of a typical Iowa farm.
We raised all the own crops, baled the hay, did the corn, the oats, everything, the whole ball of wax.
I grew up on a farm in south central Wisconsin, a dairy farm that had been in my father's family for, since about the mid-1800s.
Will Fellows is the editor of Farm Boys, which profiles over 3 dozen gay men who grew up on farms throughout the Midwest.
I was often frustrated by the lack of representation of rural experience with regard to being gay. So it was some curiosity, kind of looking at how does gay identity and rural heritage intersect.
I'm not comfortable in the typical gay cultural things. I'm not comfortable in bars around people that socialize outrageously, and so finding a partner, someone like Will is, who sort of mirrors a more conservative approach to life. I think that happened because of what happened, growing up in the kind of farm culture that I did.
I think that there's a big prejudice in recognizing gay people in the rural areas simply because there's so much media that's so centered around the coasts, around the urban atmosphere, within the gay media in particular, but also just in the way that we view ourselves. We almost discredit people who are living out in the rural areas as not necessarily being in the gay community, which is false.
I grew up in a little town just outside of Green Bay, and the name of the town is Freedom, and I always like to say freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose, which kind of puts my feelings about living in a small town. I had absolutely no exposure to anything gay or lesbian growing up. There was nothing in the media. There was no one in my community that I knew if they were or not. I mean, I had no idea. I don't think I could spell lesbian, much less know what one was.
Tara Ayers grew up in the city, but now lives on a 50-acre organic farm.
I've run into a lot of lesbians who want to live in the country and who are afraid of isolation, especially with winters like we have here in Wisconsin. The fact of the matter is I have people coming through all the time who want to visit year-round because they also want to get out of the city, whether it's for a short respite, whether it's the afternoon, or whether it's for a week to get away, because there is something relaxing and healing, if you will, about being in the country.
Farm boy turned filmmaker Mark Christopher now lives in New York, but returns to his home state of Iowa to rejuvenate. He has also returned there in his work. Mark's short film, Alkali, Iowa, is playing in theaters this spring as part of the feature, Boy's Life 2.
Sounds sort of corny, but you really, I mean, it's an earthy upbringing. If you grow up on the land like that and you're really attached to the land, you really have a lot more grounded way of looking at life. I mean, especially in this business, in the movies, you know, it gets really crazy. When I go home in the summer, it's really a place where I can go back and refuel because you just see what's important again.
Steve Gay and Jim Lawver both felt most at home returning to farm life as adults.
I think it's pretty well, everybody looks at us as a farm couple, yeah.
They run a hog farm and have been living there together for 13 years.
It's a lot of hard work, and it's our life and our livelihood. You think you're the only gay person, you know, that lives probably in your county or your immediate area, but I think now that we've been open and out and living as we have for a long time, we've met so many other gay people that live around here that, you know, I don't know how I ever felt that way.
So there's a lot in the area, a lot of gay couples.
A lot of gay couples and just a lot of single gay people that, you know, grew up in the small town that we have here, and it's where you're born and raised, and coming back home after college and starting to farm here was probably something that I always thought I'd do one way or another, and just the fact that I came to perception that I was gay didn't change that at all. It's, you know, just who I am, so it just was natural to me.
Whether living in the city or not, everyone we talked to valued their experience in the country.
I spent a lot of time outside, outdoors, with Mother Nature and all of the elements that she provides. And I think it just gives one a better sense of how the whole world works.
We were able to play all kinds of games, running through the pastures and hiding in the barn, and, you know, we were not supposed to climb the silo, though we did anyway, so.
I think farm kids have a little bit different value, a little bit different appreciation for things in life. I think there's a lot that you learn by rural living. There's sacrifices that you make when you're growing up and stuff, and I think it instills different values and different things in your life that affect you later on.
Parents' voices tell yet another part of the story of being gay or lesbian in America, and that's where PFLAG comes in. Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays is a national organization that has always offered love and support to gay people, especially their parents, who go through their own coming out process when they find out that a son or daughter is gay or lesbian. But PFLAG's work has also been known to upset a few people, and so in the past couple of years, we've been seeing a whole new side of PFLAG, the activist side.
Homosexuality is an abomination. The practices of these people is appalling. God hates homosexuality. Many of those people involved in Adolf Hitler were Satanists. Many of them were homosexuals. The two things seem to go together. It is a pathology. It is a sickness.
My son Paul was brutally murdered. The FBI said it was a gay bashing.
Paid for by parents, families, and friends of lesbians and gays.
In 1995, PFLAG launched a campaign called Project Open Mind. The keystone of the campaign was to have been a series of television ads linking hate speech with hate crimes and suicide.
The people and organizations that were involved in this hate speech did not take kindly to our message.
In an open letter to station managers, the Christian Broadcasting Network warned they would immediately seek judicial redress against any station that dared show the ads.
However, because of this whole thing, there was a controversy, and our message, the Project Open Mind message about the linkage between hate speech and hate crimes got out, probably much more effectively than if the ads ran.
Beyond television ads, PFLAG's message has also been carried to the floor of Congress.
Our national president and national vice president, Mitzi Henderson and Nancy McDonald, both testified against the Defense of Marriage Act.
This bill is yet another piece of legislation that tells the American people in no uncertain terms that we do not value the contributions of gay and lesbians.
We talk about three things that are at the center or core of PFLAG, and that is support, education, and we talk about advocacy. A national organization can lead you in one direction, but when you have 400 chapters out there that can each do things, the multiplying effect is incredible. That is the strength of PFLAG. So, you know, when you talk about a Fargo chapter having a billboard and puts it up there right in the middle of Fargo, I am frankly awestruck. When the Toledo chapter does a book and video on homosexuality, I am really so proud of these organizations. When a chapter in Northern Idaho, frankly, you know, exists, it's really inspiring.
Another chapter is located in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. Here at a monthly meeting, members share the heart of their experiences and reveal the motivation behind PFLAG's activism.
I would like other parents to look at me and say, if she has a gay daughter, anyone can have a gay daughter. If she is accepting and loving, maybe I can be too. It was a very long, slow process for me to accept my daughter. It took many years. I initially responded rather poorly, I'm ashamed to admit. I was too preoccupied with what was she doing to me rather than what was happening to her. So I was less than supportive.
And we were today, 23 years later, helping other people go through what we went through and try to maybe make it a little easier for them by telling them our experiences and what we went through.
It was an eye-opener to see parents going through the growth process, the coming out process.
I was really by myself. I had nobody to talk to, nobody to discuss it with. I think the shower in the morning was my best friend because I was able to cry. I think even if you don't talk, even if you just sit here and listen and keep coming back and listening, you will see you're not the only one. You will see there's nothing really wrong with your child. It just puts you at peace, in a peace. If a kid that has not come out yet, and he comes to us first to see our reaction to him, we can explain to him where his mother or father is coming from because we've been there. I think that makes the discussion groups great because we understand also where the kids are coming from and how hard it was for them to come out. Because it's not just about us, it's about them too.
The greatest strength of PFLAG is the community of safety and comfort that it provides people who are going through similar situations.
For many members, marching in a gay pride event is one of the first and most enduring highlights of their time in PFLAG.
The first time I participated, it was my coming out and my saying, and wearing a sign that said, I love my lesbian daughter.
And all the young people asking us and wishing us well and wishing we were their parents and wishing my parents would come out. It just was overwhelming.
They cheer you on and accept you. It just makes it very easy to be active in a community that the kids really want you at.
It's an experience I will never forget. And so I march every year and duplicate that feeling to make a difference in somebody's life, anybody's life.
If all gays and lesbians and their parents stood up right now and said, this is it, the problem would go away. The problem would be gone. There's one real kernel that you get out of the PFLAG organization, what it's all about. What I see all around me at PFLAG is love. It's love. It's love of people for their kids.
My child is very lucky, and I'm very lucky.
From all of us at In the Life, Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
In the Life is funded in part by the H. Van Ameringen Foundation. Additional support provided by the Gill Foundation, the Joyce Mertz Gilmore Foundation, the Michael Palm Foundation, The Advocate, the National Gay and Lesbian News Magazine since 1967, and In the Life members nationwide.